I'm Catherine Caroli. I wanted to talk a little bit more about one etude in particular. This is Anderson Opus 15, number 4B. I had somebody write in and ask me to speak about controlling the low notes, especially when jumping from high to low. I found one book really helpful in practicing that, and it's this Marcel Moïse etude and exercise technique, because he has so many exercises to practice for the low register articulation. You don't necessarily need this book. There are all kinds of ways that you can practice it, but I would suggest before you tackle something like this etude 4B that you do a lot of low register tongue exercises. Another one that I thought of as I was preparing for this is from De la Sonorité. So the long tone exercise that we do to practice intervals can also be used to practice tonguing. So that's your final goal with this. I'm starting on C and then chromatically jumping back and forth. Maybe the first step would be to play slurred. If you have to breathe, just make sure you repeat the note you breathed on so you get the benefit of that interval as well. So the goal here really is to balance the quality of sound, to make it the same on every note. Once you can do that, then you can go to legato tonguing, which is sort of the intermediate step, and then you could go to detached tonguing. Now, if this feels too challenging or you feel like you're missing a lot of the low notes, it's time to really just practice the low notes by themselves. So I would take a note that you feel relatively comfortable articulating on. Maybe it's E. Go from playing a long sustained note to legato repeated notes to gradually making more space. What you really want to be aware of is where you're tonguing. I'm tonguing just behind the tip of my tongue, and almost like in a the position, trying to keep my embouchure very still as I tongue. The other thing that I'm doing is trying to control my embouchure from the middle of my upper lip rather than from the corners of my embouchure. I find that the more pulled back I am, the less consistent I can be with making sure that I can control the sound when I play those low notes articulated. A really good way to practice getting control of the middle upper lip is actually learning how to circular breathe. The goal doesn't need to be that you can circular breathe, although that's great, why not? But in the process of learning, you end up having to be able to control your embouchure without the help of the corners. Since when you're playing with a circular breath, I'm just using the air in my mouth, my cheeks are so inflated that I don't have the ability to attach the corners of my lips the way that I would if I were just playing without doing that. So in the effort to learn how to circular breathe, you really do learn how to control the embouchure from the middle. So again, not necessarily with the goal in mind of circular breathing, but just the practice. I find Robert Dick's book on learning how to circular breathe super helpful. And I will say that for me, it made a big difference in how I approached my embouchure and made a big difference in how I learned how to control my embouchure from the middle of my upper lip. So back to the low E that we were practicing. As I'm sustaining my E, I'm really taking into account how I'm using my embouchure to focus the sound. And if you find you can put a little bit of air in your cheeks, that's going to immediately force the corners of your embouchure to relax a little bit. When I start legato tonguing, then I become very aware of my tongue placement and my tongue striking. Again, I feel as though I'm saying the. I'm also using as little tongue as possible. same thing, so on and so forth, down to E flat, D, C sharp, C, and B. This is where this book in particular gets really helpful because it will have exercises, which again you can make up, where you're just spending measure after measure tonguing these low notes. So step one, get control of your low note tonguing. Step two then is how to achieve jumping down to a low note from a higher note. What I find happens far too often with flute players is that we try to blast our low notes out and overplay them. And what that does usually is causes them to crack or a delay in the response. At any rate, it tends to backfire. So if I take a place from, this again is Anderson Opus 15, number 4. If I take a place here, I'm really thinking across my low note. I'm not thinking of digging down into it. I'm not thinking of trying to play it louder. I'm playing the B, the third note, and sustaining my slur through the E all the way until I tongue the G. That way I don't lose the quality of the sound on the low note. When you have to actually tongue the low notes, for example, this is in the end of measure 30 of that same etude. Same thing, I'm not trying to overblow on the D's. I'm keeping very calm, and I am really using contrary motion when I come back down to the D's. Of course, I can go too far because if you aim the air too high, you're going to get a fuzzy sound. But I'm trying to think more or less across to the low D's, not down into them. Another passage here, measure 37. Same thing here. I'm not trying to dive down to the low note. I'm thinking across. So again, really important to take this very slowly. Make sure that you can play with equal balance on all of those notes and equal good quality of sound, and that you're not trying to dig into your low notes. So that's just a little bit about jumping from high notes to low notes. It's obviously a complicated topic and it's difficult to do well, but I hope it's helpful. And as always, you can send feedback or requests to katherinecaroli@gmail.com. Thanks so much.